Hey, everybody, welcome back. You know, I think we all kind of ponder this at some point, how to find meaning in life without constantly, chasing those external goals.
Right.
So today, we are going to be taking a deep dive into a lecture from a Buddhist teacher named Tsondru Yeshe.
And one of the things that makes Tsondru Yeshe so interesting is that he's actually combined his Buddhist training with a background in psychology.
Okay.
So it's not just like, this ancient wisdom. It's also grounded in a more modern understanding of, how the mind actually works.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. I always love that kind of intersection of different fields of thought.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, Tsondru Yeshe, he paints this picture that I think so many of us can relate to of the hamster wheel. You're constantly chasing, it's like social media likes or that promotion at work or the bigger house, but you never really feel satisfied.
Right.
And he's saying the key is to actually stop chasing and just try to live in the present moment.
And it's important to clarify that he's not saying give up on your dreams or settle for mediocrity.
Yeah.
It's more about shifting the focus. Instead of looking for happiness in those external things,
Yeah.
you start to cultivate it from within.
Okay. That sounds great in theory, but it's so different from how we're kind of taught to approach life.
Yeah. Totally. And that's where Tsondru Yeshe brings in this Buddhist concept of samsara,
Okay.
which is essentially this cycle of suffering that's driven by our constant craving for things we don't have and the fear of losing the things we do. So think about it, how much of our stress comes from wanting things to be different
Right.
than they are right now?
It's almost all of it when I really think about it.
Yeah.
I'm constantly comparing myself to others on social media or worrying about stuff that might not even happen.
Exactly. And that's the thing about samsara. It
Yeah.
really is so relevant to modern life.
Yeah.
Regardless of, what your spiritual beliefs are or anything like that. It's just about recognizing that this constant chase for something better, it actually keeps us from finding contentment in the present. And that's where meditation comes in.
Okay, this is where I get a little skeptical.
Yeah.
Because I think for a lot of people, meditation seems like this thing that, you do sitting cross-legged on a mountaintop.
Right.
Not very practical for, daily life.
I hear you. And Tsondru Yeshe actually addresses that.
Okay.
He's not talking about, complicated rituals or hours of chanting.
Yeah.
He suggests starting with something incredibly simple.
Okay.
Just focusing on your breath.
Really?
Yeah, for just a few minutes each day.
Just focusing on your breath.
Yeah.
Okay. How does that help with everything we've been talking about?
Well, that feeling of having a million thoughts racing through your head all at once?
Oh, yeah.
It's like a room full of monkeys all chattering away.
Oh, yeah.
Tsondru Yeshe actually calls that the monkey mind, and it's one of the biggest obstacles to finding peace.
I definitely have a monkey mind. Sometimes it feels like it never shuts off.
It's so common, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where the breath comes in by focusing on something so simple.
Yeah.
As the in and out of your breath, you start to quiet those monkeys.
Okay.
You're training your mind to be present, to focus on the here and now.
So it's like creating a little space of calm in the middle of all the chaos.
Exactly.
So it's less about emptying your mind or achieving some kind of blissful state. It's more about just training yourself to be more present.
Right. And not getting swept away by those, those thoughts and anxieties.
Right.
And as we practice this, something amazing happens.
Okay.
We start to realize that true happiness, that deep sense of contentment, doesn't actually come from achieving external goals or getting more stuff.
Okay.
It comes from cultivating a sense of inner peace.
I mean, that makes sense, but I think it goes against a lot of what we're told, in society, right?
Oh, yes. Work hard, achieve success, and then you'll be happy.
And Tsondru Yeshe tells a story about, people with immense wealth and status who are still desperately unhappy.
Wow.
They've achieved all those external markers of success, but they're still searching for fulfillment in all the wrong places.
So it's not about the external stuff at all. It's about our internal state.
Exactly.
Okay.
And a big part of that internal state is learning to manage our emotions.
Okay.
Especially the ones that Tsondru Yeshe refers to as these negative emotions, things like anger, pride, and envy.
Oh, fine.
Right. These are the emotions that he says keep us trapped in that cycle of suffering.
Wait, so even everyday annoyances, getting stuck in traffic or feeling jealous of a friend's new car, those are contributing to my suffering.
It might sound dramatic.
Yeah.
But think about it. When we let those emotions run wild,
Yeah.
they really color how we see the world.
Okay.
So if you're consumed by anger, everything starts to feel threatening and frustrating.
Right.
If you're blinded by envy, you can't appreciate the good things in your own life. Yeah, I never thought of it that way,
Yeah.
but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with these negative emotions? Do we just try to, like, ignore them?
Well, ignoring them usually doesn't work.
Yeah.
Tsondru Yeshe's approach is more about understanding them. He says, recognizing these emotions, like acknowledging them without judgment,
Hmm.
that's the first step towards actually managing them effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the practice of meditation comes in again.
Okay.
It helps us create that little space between ourselves and our emotions
Right.
so that we can observe them without being completely swept away by them.
So it's like we're learning to be in control of our emotions instead of letting them control us.
Exactly. And as we gain mastery over our internal state, we start to see that meaning and happiness aren't things that we need to go searching for,
Okay.
in these extraordinary experiences or far-off lands.
You mean we don't have to climb Mount Everest or win the lottery to feel fulfilled?
Exactly. Tsondru Yeshe really emphasizes finding meaning in everyday life, in the simple things that we so often take for granted.
I'm really intrigued by this idea. So how do we actually go about finding meaning in those everyday moments?
That's a great question, and that's what we're going to dive into after a quick break.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear more about that.
Mm.
So we're back, and I'm really interested to, like, dig into this idea of finding meaning in everyday life. Because I think it's easy to get caught up in thinking that you need these big dramatic experiences, to really feel fulfilled.
Yeah, it's a common misconception, and it actually keeps us trapped on that hamster wheel, of always seeking happiness outside of ourselves.
Right.
Tsondru Yeshe kind of challenges that by suggesting that true meaning isn't about those extraordinary circumstances, but rather cultivating a sense of appreciation for the present moment, no matter what you're doing.
Okay, so that sounds almost too simple. Can you, like, give an example of what that might look like?
Yeah, so imagine you're washing the dishes. Instead of like rushing through it, thinking about all the other things you need to do, you really focus your attention on the task at hand. You feel the warm water on your hands. You notice the scent of the soap. You hear the clinking of the dishes.
Oh, so I'm, like, really engaging all my senses and just, like, experiencing it fully.
Exactly. And by bringing this level of awareness to even the most mundane tasks, something really interesting happens.
What's that?
They stop feeling so mundane. You start to actually see the beauty and the importance of these everyday moments.
Okay, I can see how that shift in perspective could be really powerful, but I gotta be honest, like, I struggle with staying present, especially when I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed.
Right, and that's where the practice of meditation we talked about earlier can be so helpful.
Yeah.
Remember, it's not about emptying your mind or achieving some kind of blissful state.
Yeah.
It's about training your attention, strengthening that ability to focus on the present moment, even when there are all these distractions swirling around you.
So it's like building a mental muscle. The more we practice focusing our attention, the better we get at it.
Exactly. And what's amazing is that this ability to be present, it kind of spills over into all areas of our lives. You become less reactive to stress, you're more capable of handling challenging situations, and you're more appreciative of just the simple joys that life has to offer.
I mean, this is really making me rethink my whole approach to happiness. Like, instead of chasing after it, I can cultivate it by just paying attention to what's already here.
Yeah, and by recognizing that true happiness isn't dependent on external circumstances.
Okay.
Tsondru Yeshe points out that even people who achieve great wealth and success often find themselves feeling empty and unfulfilled because they're still looking for happiness in the wrong places.
It's like they're always reaching for that next carrot on the stick.
Yeah, and the truth is that carrot doesn't even exist.
Right.
Lasting happiness, that deep sense of contentment and peace that comes from within, it's about cultivating a state of mind rather than achieving a particular outcome.
So this all makes a lot of sense, but I'm wondering, like, how does this apply to finding meaning in life? Are you saying that just being present is enough to give our lives a sense of purpose?
That's a great question. And Tsondru Yeshe would say that being present allows us to see the interconnectedness of everything.
Okay.
When we're fully engaged in the present moment, even the most ordinary tasks can start to feel meaningful.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I'm not sure I totally understand how, like, washing the dishes can suddenly feel purposeful.
Yeah, so think about it this way. When you're washing the dishes with full awareness, you're not just cleaning dishes, you're creating a clean and pleasant space for yourself and your family. You're taking care of your home. You're participating in this cycle of life by using water and soap resources that come from the earth.
Wow, I never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
It's like every action, no matter how small, can have this ripple effect.
Exactly. And when we start to see those connections, we realize that even the most ordinary moments are filled with meaning and purpose. We're all part of something much larger than ourselves.
And our actions, no matter how small, they contribute to the well-being of the world around us.
This is really eye-opening. Like, it feels like a whole new way of looking at life.
And it all starts with that simple shift in perspective,
Hmm.
from chasing to appreciating,
Right.
from seeking external validation to cultivating inner peace.
And as Tsondru Yeshe reminds us that inner peace is available to all of us right here, right now, in the ordinary moments of our lives.
Exactly. And it might sound simple, but putting it into practice can sometimes be challenging. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next section.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Okay, so we've been talking about like finding meaning in everyday life and cultivating inner peace, but what about those negative emotions that Tsondru Yeshe talks about, the anger, envy, the pride? How
Yeah.
do those fit into this whole picture?
Well, remember that cycle of suffering, that samsara we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier? Those negative emotions are like fuel for that fire. They keep
Hmm.
us trapped in that cycle of craving and aversion and prevent us from experiencing true peace and contentment. Okay, so how do we deal with those emotions?
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like they're just a natural part of life.
Yeah, they are a part of life, but Tsondru Yeshe emphasizes that we don't have to be ruled by them. He uses this really interesting analogy of a rider on an elephant.
Okay,
The elephant represents our emotions, powerful and sometimes unpredictable, and the rider represents our mindful awareness.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So are you saying we need to become better riders, so to speak, to control those like unruly emotions?
Exactly. And that's where the practice of meditation becomes so valuable. It's like training for that rider. The more we practice, the stronger and more skillful we become at guiding those emotional elephants instead of being thrown around by every surge of anger or envy. We learn to observe those emotions with a sense of detachment.
So instead of trying to like suppress those emotions, we're actually creating space to acknowledge them and understand them better.
Exactly. And that's where the real transformation happens when we stop judging ourselves for having those emotions. When we can just observe them without getting swept away by them, we start to break free from their grip, become less reactive, more resilient, and more capable of making choices that align with our values.
This is all so insightful. It's like you're giving us this whole new set of tools for navigating the ups and downs of life.
And Tsondru Yeshe would say that these tools are available to all of us. It's not about becoming a monk or living in a cave. It's about making small but consistent changes in our everyday lives. It's about choosing to cultivate awareness, to practice mindfulness, to nurture that inner peace.
And to find meaning not in chasing after external goals, but in appreciating the present moment no matter where we are or what we're doing.
Exactly. It's a profound shift in perspective, but it's one that can lead to lasting happiness and fulfillment.
So what does this all mean for our listeners? Like, what's one thing they can take away from this deep dive?
I think the most important message is that you already have everything you need to be happy. It's not about acquiring more, achieving more, or becoming someone different. It's about tapping into the peace and wisdom that already exists within you. And the practices we've talked about today, like meditation and mindful awareness, are simply tools to help you access that inner wellspring.
I love that. So instead of chasing happiness, we're actually inviting it in by cultivating a sense of inner peace and presence.
Beautifully said. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. Be patient with yourself, be kind to yourself, and enjoy the ride.
This has been such a rich and thought-provoking conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all of our listeners, we hope this deep dive has inspired you to stop chasing and start living. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of ideas.